Learning about humans. She asked for an intimate introduction. First contact. The rain fell softly on the cobblestone streets of Harborview, creating a gentle rhythm that Zephyr Ashton found oddly soothing. He sat in the corner of a modest cafe, his notebook filled with observations about human behavior. To anyone watching, he appeared to be an ordinary man in his 30s, perhaps a writer or researcher. No one suspected that beneath his carefully constructed human appearance existed something entirely different. Zephyr had been on Earth for 3 months, studying the complexities of human emotion and interaction. His people, the Valen, were intellectually advanced but emotionally distant. They sent scholars like him to understand species capable of such intense feelings. Yet despite his meticulous research, humans remained an enigma. "You've been staring at me for 10 minutes. The voice startled him. A woman stood beside his table, arms crossed, but smiling. She had dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, eyes the color of amber, and an expression of amused curiosity. Her presence seemed to fill the space around her with warmth. "I apologize," he said carefully. "I was observing." "That's one word for it." She pulled out the chair across from him without invitation. "I'm Lyra Brennan, and you're either a very dedicated people watcher or something more interesting." Her directness caught him off guard. Humans typically maintain social boundaries with strangers. "Zephyr Ashton," he replied. "That's not a local name." Lyra leaned forward, studying him with the same intensity she'd been using on her. "Actually, you don't move like a local either. Too deliberate. Too aware of every gesture." His pulse quickened, a human response he'd learned to simulate. Had he been careless? "I'm a researcher, cultural anthropology." "Liar! But an interesting one. Let me guess, you're not from around here, and I don't mean the next town over." For a long moment, Zephyr considered his options. Protocol demanded he maintain his cover, but something in Lyra's expression, open, fearless, genuinely curious, made him choose honesty. "You're perceptive," he said quietly. "No, I'm not from this planet." Instead of laughing or recoiling, Lyra's eyes lit up with fascination. "I knew it! The way you watch us, like we're the most fascinating puzzle you've ever encountered." She reached across the table, her hand hovering near his. "So, alien anthropologist, what have you learned about humans so far?" "That I understand very little. I can document behaviors, analyze patterns, but the essence of humanity eludes me." Lyra's expression softened into something almost tender. "That's because you're studying us from the outside. You can't understand humans by watching, Zephyr. You have to feel what we feel, experience what we experience." She paused, a playful glint returning to her eyes. "I could teach you an intimate introduction to humanity, not the academic kind." Intimate? The word carried implications his research had covered, but never fully explained. "The messy, emotional, passionate stuff, the things that make us human." She extended her hand fully now, palm up, an invitation. "Unless you're afraid." He looked at her hand, then at her face. Every logical part of him argued for refusal. Emotional involvement compromised objectivity. Yet he found himself reaching forward, his fingers touching hers. "I accept." The first lesson. Lyra's apartment overlooked the harbor with floor-to-ceiling windows that captured the sunset in shades of orange and pink. Zephyr stood at the glass, watching the colors shift across the water, trying to understand why humans found such phenomena beautiful. "Stop analyzing," Lyra called from the kitchen. "Just feel it." "I don't know how to do that." She appeared beside him with 2 glasses of wine, pressing one into his hand. "Start here. Don't think about the chemical composition or the fermentation process. Just taste it." Zephyr sipped carefully. The liquid was warm, complex, with layers of flavor he hadn't anticipated. "It's pleasant." "Pleasant," Lyra laughed. a sound that seemed to resonate in his chest. "You really do need help." She moved closer, her shoulder brushing his. Lesson 1. Humans experience life through our senses. We don't just observe, we immerse ourselves. She guided him to the small dining table where she'd prepared dinner. Simple food, pasta, fresh bread, salad, but she explained each taste, each texture, watching his reactions with careful attention. Zephyr found himself noticing not just the food, but her, the way candlelight caught in her hair, how her eyes crinkled when she smiled, the gentle movement of her hands as she spoke. "You are staring again," she said softly. "You're distracting." Something shifted in her expression, a warmth that made the space between them feel charged. "Tell me about your world, Zephyr. What are your people like?" "Efficient, logical. We value knowledge above all else." He set down his fork. "We don't do this, share meals, engage in small talk. We exchange information directly through neural links. It's faster, cleaner." "Sounds lonely." The word struck him. Lonely. He'd never considered it before, but now, sitting across from Lyra in her warm apartment, he recognized the hollowness of his previous existence. Perhaps it is. Lyra stood and moved to the couch, patting the seat beside her. When he sat, she turned to face him, drawing one leg beneath her. Lesson 2. Physical closeness. Humans need touch. It's how we communicate things words can't express. She reached for his hand, her fingers tracing patterns on his palm. The sensation sent unexpected signals through his nervous system. Pleasure, curiosity, something deeper he couldn't name. His research had documented human touch extensively, but experiencing it was entirely different. "Your heart is racing," she observed, her hand moving to rest against his chest. "I don't understand what's happening to me." "You're feeling, Zephyr, really feeling." She shifted closer, her face inches from his. "Is it frightening?" "Yes and no." He found himself lifting his hand to her face, fingers gentle against her cheek. Her skin was soft, warm, alive in ways his analytical mind couldn't capture. "Lyra, She closed the distance between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that short-circuited every logical thought in his mind. It was tender at first, exploratory, then deeper as she pressed closer. Zephyr's hands found her waist, pulling her against him, responding to instincts he didn't know he possessed. When they finally separated, both slightly breathless, Lyra smiled. "That's lesson 3. Desire. Connection. The way two people can create something entirely new between them." "This violates every protocol," Zephyr whispered, though he didn't move away. "Good." She kissed him again, softer this time. The best parts of being human usually do. They spent the rest of the evening on her couch, talking quietly, sharing touches that ranged from innocent to charged with promise. Zephyr told her about his mentor, Thane Corvus, who would disapprove entirely of this emotional engagement. Lyra spoke of her best friend, Sienna Cross, who would probably think she'd lost her mind for getting involved with an alien. As midnight approached, Lyra walked him to the door. "Same time tomorrow?" "Yes." He hesitated, then kissed her forehead, a gesture he had observed but never understood until now. "Thank you, Lyra." "For what?" "For showing me I've been half alive." After he left, Zephyr stood outside her building, looking up at her window. His communicator buzzed, Thane demanding a status report. He silenced it. For the first time since arriving on Earth, his research felt secondary to something far more important. Inside, Lyra touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss, wondering what she'd begun, and whether her heart could survive loving someone from another world.
Deeper connection. 3 weeks passed in a blur of shared experiences. Lyra took Zephyr dancing, taught him to laugh at terrible movies, showed him the ocean at dawn. Each moment peeled away another layer of his carefully constructed detachment, revealing something raw and vulnerable beneath. They stood on the beach now, waves lapping at their bare feet. Lyra held his hand, guiding him forward into the surf. "It's cold," Zephyr observed, though he didn't pull away. "That's the point. Feel it. The water, the sand, the wind." She turned to face him, her dress billowing around her legs. "You're getting better at this, being present." "I had a good teacher." He drew her closer, his arms circling her waist. Over the past weeks, touching her had become natural, necessary even. "Though I suspect you're teaching me more than you intended." "Oh?" She looped her arms around his neck. "Like what?" "That observation and experience are not the same. That loneliness is a choice. That I've been living in exile without realizing it." His voice dropped lower. "That I'm capable of feeling things I thought were impossible for my species." Lyra's expression grew serious. "Zephyr, what exactly are you feeling?" Before you could answer, his communicator buzzed insistently. He'd been ignoring Thane's calls for days, but this was the emergency frequency. Reluctantly, he stepped away from Lyra and activated it. Thane's face appeared, stern and disapproving. "Zephyr, we need to talk. In person, now. I'm in the middle of—" "I know exactly what you're in the middle of, and it ends today. Pier 7, 10 minutes. The communication ended abruptly. Lyra had been watching, her arms wrapped around herself against the wind. "That didn't sound good." "My mentor. He wants to meet." "Then I'm coming with you." They found Fane waiting at the designated pier, his form perfectly human, but his bearing unmistakably alien, rigid, controlled, analytical. He studied Lyra with cold assessment before turning to Zephyr. "This is the human." Thane's tone carried obvious disapproval. "Her name is Lyra Brennan, and yes, your reports have become erratic. You're compromised." Thane stepped closer. "I'm ordering you to terminate this attachment and complete your mission. We leave for home in 1 week." The words hit Zephyr like physical blows. 1 week. Return to a world where emotions were weaknesses, where connection was inefficiency, where Lyra didn't exist. "I need more time," he said quietly. "For what? You've gathered sufficient data. Unless—" Thane's eyes narrowed. "You've developed feelings for this human. Zephyr, that's not research. That's contamination." "Contamination?" Lyra's voice cut sharp. "Is that what you think love is?" "Love is a chemical reaction humans use to justify irrational behavior," Fane replied coldly. "Zephyr, you're a scientist, you know this." But Zephyr was looking at Lyra, seeing the hurt and fear in her eyes, feeling an answering ache in his own chest. "What if I don't want to go back?" Silence fell heavy between them. Fane's expression hardened. "That's not an option. You have obligations, responsibilities. Your people are depending on this research. My people are dying of emotional starvation, and they don't even know it. We've optimized ourselves into isolation. Maybe that's what we really need to learn from humans. Not how they function, but how they live. You have 1 week to come to your senses. After that, I'll report your compromised state to the council. They'll send others to retrieve you. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He walked away, leaving them alone on the pier. Lyra turned to Zephyr, tears threatening. "Were you ever going to tell me you had to leave?" "I didn't know how." She reached for her, but she stepped back. "I knew this was complicated, but I thought what we had mattered more than your research." "It does. Lyra, it does." He closed the distance between them, cupping her face in his hands. "You matter more than anything. That's what terrifies me." She searched his eyes, then slowly nodded. "Come home with me." In her apartment, they didn't speak at first. Lyra poured wine with shaking hands, while Zephyr stood by the window, wrestling with impossible choices. When she joined him, pressing the glass into his hand, their fingers lingered together. "If you have 1 week, Then let's not waste it being afraid." She kissed him then, desperate and fierce, and he responded with equal intensity, lifting her against him as they stumbled towards her bedroom. They shed clothes and inhibitions, exploring each other with urgent tenderness. Every touch was a revelation, every whispered word a small rebellion against the forces trying to separate them. Afterward, lying tangled together in her sheets, Zephyr held her close, memorizing the feel of her heartbeat against his chest. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I didn't know I was capable of it until I met you, but I do." Lyra tilted her face up to kiss him softly. "Then figure out how to stay."
The conflict. The following days were bittersweet agony. Zephyr and Lyra clung to each moment as though it might be their last, but the shadow of his impending departure loomed over everything. They made love with fierce urgency, shared meals in weighted silence, and pretended that time wasn't running out. On the 5th day, Sienna arrived at Lyra's apartment unannounced. She took one look at her friend's red-rimmed eyes and pulled her into a tight embrace. "Tell me everything," Sienna demanded, shooting a protective glare at Zephyr. Over coffee, Lyra explained the situation. Sienna listened, her expression shifting from skepticism to sympathy. "So you fell in love with an alien who has to leave Earth in 2 days. Of course you did." "It's not her fault," Zephyr said quietly. "I should have maintained boundaries. I failed in my discipline." "Stop talking like a robot," Sienna snapped. "You love her. She loves you. That's not a failure. That's the most human thing I've ever heard." She turned to Lyra. "But honey, you need to protect yourself. If he leaves, you'll be devastated." "I know," Lyra's voice broke, "but I can't regret loving him, even if it destroys me." Zephyr felt something crack inside his chest. He'd done this to her, brought pain to the person who'd given him everything. Perhaps Sienna is right. Perhaps I should leave now. Make it easier. "Don't you dare," Lyra interrupted fiercely. "Don't you dare decide what's easier for me. We have 2 more days, and I want every second of them." That evening, as they lay together in the darkness, Zephyr made a decision. He slipped from bed while Lyra slept and activated his communicator, requesting a meeting with Thane. They met at the pier again, under a moonless sky. Thane arrived promptly, his expression unreadable. "I've decided," Zephyr said without preamble. "I'm staying on Earth. I'll renounce my position, my people, everything. Just let me stay." "You know that's impossible," Thane's voice was almost gentle. "Our physiology requires regular treatments to survive in this environment. Without them, you'll deteriorate within 6 months, die within a year." The words hit like ice water. "You never mentioned," "Because it was never relevant. You were always meant to return." Thane stepped closer. "Zephyr, I understand you formed an attachment, but it's built on a foundation of impossibility. Even if I allowed you to stay, you'd be condemning yourself to a slow death. Is that really what you want? To make her watch you fade?" Zephyr's hands clenched into fists. "There must be another way." "There isn't. Our people have searched for alternatives for generations. Earth's atmosphere, its radiation levels, they're fundamentally incompatible with our biology long term." Thane's expression softened fractionally. "I'm sorry, truly, but you're killing yourself with hope." After Thane left, Zephyr stood alone on the pier for hours, watching the waves and trying to find the solution where none existed. When he finally returned to Lyra's apartment at dawn, she was awake, wrapped in a blanket, waiting. "You went to see him," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes." "And—" He sat beside her, taking her hands in his. "Lyra, I need to tell you something about my biology." He explained everything, the treatments, the deterioration, the inevitable death that would come if he stayed. Tears streamed down her face as he spoke. "So, even if you wanted to stay, you can't really. I would die for you, gladly. But Thane made me realize, that's not love, that's selfishness. Making you watch me deteriorate, leaving you alone after a few months of happiness. I can't do that to you. So what are we supposed to do? Her voice cracked. Just say goodbye and pretend this meant nothing? It meant everything. He pulled her into his arms, both of them shaking. It changed me fundamentally. I'll return to my world a different person because of you. But Lyra, my love, I have to let you go. She pulled back, anger flashing through her grief. No, you don't get to make this decision alone. Maybe I want those 6 months. Maybe I'd rather have a half a year with you than a lifetime without you. And I'd rather you have a full life without me than a brief happiness followed by trauma and loss. His voice broke. Please don't make this harder than it already is. Harder? She stood abruptly, pacing. You're asking me to let you walk away from the most real thing I've ever experienced. You're asking me to smile and wave while my heart breaks. How could it possibly be harder? They argued through the morning, their words sharp with pain and desperation. Finally, exhausted, they collapsed together on the couch, holding each other as the sun climbed higher. I hate this, Lyra whispered against his chest. I hate that we found each other just to lose each other. So do I. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, gentle touches of farewell. As dawn approached, Zephyr dressed slowly, committing every detail to memory. The way Lyra looked in the morning light, the sound of her breathing, the warmth of her apartment that had become more home than anywhere else he'd ever been. At the door, they held each other one last time. I love you, he said. Across galaxies, across impossibilities, I love you. I love you too, always. He forced himself to step away, to walk through the door, to keep walking even as every instinct screamed at him to turn back. Behind him, Lyra sank to the floor, her sobs the last sound he heard as he left her world behind.
The choice. The transport station hummed with alien technology, preparing for departure. Zephyr stood in the boarding area, his small bag of belongings at his feet, feeling hollow. Around him, other researchers moved with efficient purpose, but he couldn't summon the energy to care. Thane approached, his expression neutral. Everything is prepared. We leave in 20 minutes. Zephyr nodded numbly. 20 minutes until he left Earth forever. 20 minutes until he returned to a life that would feel like sleepwalking after experiencing Lyra's vibrant warmth. You did the right thing, Thane said quietly. It would have been cruel to stay, knowing how it would end. Then why does it feel like I'm dying anyway? Before Thane could respond, a commotion erupted at the station entrance. Security was trying to stop someone, a human woman who was shouting and pushing past them. Zephyr! Zephyr Ashton! His heart stopped. Lyra burst through the final barrier, her hair wild, her eyes desperate and determined. She ran to him, grabbing his arms. Don't go! Or take me with you! Lyra, you can't survive on my world, and I explained why I can't stay here. I know all of it, but I didn't sleep last night. I researched. Zephyr, there's a medical facility in Switzerland that's been experimenting with atmospheric adaptation treatments. They've had success with other species. It's not guaranteed, but there's a chance, a real chance that you could stay. Zephyr stared at the information, his mind racing. This research, it's preliminary, untested on my species. But it's hope. She gripped his hands tightly. It's a possibility. And isn't a possibility worth fighting for? Thane stepped forward, taking the tablet and scanning the data. His expression remained carefully neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. This is intriguing. The methodology is sound. He looked at Zephyr. It would mean staying on Earth during the treatment. Months, possibly years of uncertainty. I don't care about uncertainty, Zephyr said, his voice strengthening. I care about her, about us, about the life we could have. The Council won't approve this. They'll consider it a waste of resources on emotional indulgence. Then I'll resign from the Council. I'll renounce my citizenship if I have to. Zephyr turned to fully face his mentor. You told me I was compromised, that love was contamination. But what if it's the opposite? What if connection, real, deep, transformative connection, is what we've been missing all along? What if I'm not compromised, but finally complete? Thane was silent for a long moment, studying them both. Finally, he sighed. Your parents will be insufferable about this. At Zephyr's confused expression, he continued, Did you think I didn't know what it felt like? Why do you think I volunteered to mentor Earth researchers? I had my own education here, many years ago. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Go, try the treatment. If it works, perhaps you can convince the Council that emotional contamination is exactly what our species needs. Zephyr pulled Lyra into his arms, lifting her off her feet as relief and joy flooded through him. You came for me. Of course I did. You're worth fighting for. We're worth fighting for. The treatment was grueling. 6 months of injections, monitoring, adjustments. There were setbacks and moments of doubt. But through it all, Lyra stayed by his side, and Zephyr discovered that love was its own kind of medicine. When the doctors finally confirmed that his body had adapted, that he could survive on Earth indefinitely, they celebrated with a quiet dinner at Lyra's apartment, the same meal they'd shared on their first evening together. So, Lyra said, reaching across the table to take his hand, what do you want to do with your life now that you're officially an Earth resident? Zephyr smiled, bringing her hand to his lips. I thought I might continue my research, though perhaps with a different focus, studying not just how humans live, but how to build a life worth living, with a very willing participant as my primary subject. Is that your way of asking me to move in with you? That's my way of asking you to build a future with me. Every day, every moment, messy and emotional and perfectly imperfect. I thought you'd never ask. She stood, moving around the table to settle in his lap, her arms around his neck. They kissed as the sun set over the harbor, two souls who'd found each other across impossible distances, choosing love over logic, connection over safety, and the beautiful uncertainty of together over the hollow certainty of apart. 6 months later, at a small ceremony on the beach where they'd first decided to fight for their future, Zephyr and Lyra made their commitment official. Sienna stood as Lyra's witness, wiping away happy tears, and in a surprise that stunned Zephyr, Thane attended as well, offering his mentor's blessing and a cryptic comment about humans having taught him something valuable all those years ago. As they danced together under the stars, Lyra whispered in Zephyr's ear, So, was I a good teacher? Did you learn what it means to be human? Zephyr pulled her closer, his heart full in a way he'd never imagined possible. You taught me something better, what it means to be alive, to love, to choose connection even when it's terrifying, to be vulnerable and find strength in that vulnerability. That's very poetic for an alien anthropologist. I had an excellent teacher in the messy, emotional, passionate art of being human. He kissed her softly. "Thank you for asking for an intimate introduction. Thank you for seeing something worth saving in me." "Thank you for choosing to stay," she replied. "For choosing us." They swayed together as the ocean whispered against the shore, two hearts beating in perfect synchronicity, proof that love could indeed transcend any boundary, even the space between worlds.